Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering the woke boycotts. Bud Light has finally done it to itself. They have lost the #1 spot for beer sales, and they are not getting it back. Modelo Especial took it over. Coming from the Wall Street Journal, Bud Light loses title as top-selling U.S. beer. Modelo Especial in May took the top spot in sales volume, reflecting enduring damage from the Bud Light boycott. Wall Street Journal is telling it straight. It's in the media everywhere. You're probably seeing it right now on CNBC. Bud Light loses spot as top-selling U.S. beer in May in the wake of boycott fight. Also in the New York Post, Bud Light dethroned, loses title as America's top-selling beer. Even the New York Times has to admit Bud Light is no longer America's top-selling beer after the boycott, but the Washington Post, which is always political and always looking to protect the progressive position, Bud Light sales fall in U.S. as Mexico's Modelo gains popularity. They won't admit it's no longer the #1 beer, but it's not. Now, annually, all the annual sales taken together, Bud Light still has 1 percentage point above Modelo. However, it's been losing position since the beginning of the boycott, and now Modelo, as of the month of May, has come out as the #1 beer as it gained in market share, and Bud Light lost that market share. So unless things turn around absolutely immediately for Bud Light and they can make up all this missing lost ground, they've lost it forever. And being realistic, of course, they've lost the market share forever. Bud Light was already running out of time because they're about to lose market share, not just because it's less popular, but also because it's less popular, it's losing shelf space. That's going to be as of September. Decisions will be made. This is according to Anson Frericks, who used to be the president of Anheuser-Busch's distribution. He's explained that come September, all the major retailers and minor retailers make decisions about how much shelf space to give their beer brands, and they give shelf space to companies based on how well they've done in the last sales period. So as of the fall, it changes for the next period. Bud Light hasn't been selling. They're going to lose shelf space. And when you don't have shelf space, it's very hard to get that shelf space back. It'll still be sold, just in less places, and they won't have as much beer on the shelf as they used to have. Bud Light could lose as much as 15% permanently in sales, but if you listen to their distributors, they feel like they're losing more than 15% in sales. Unfortunately for some of these distributors, some of them only sell Bud Light, or really it's the majority of what they sell. So they're in big trouble, and they're also really not getting much help from Bud Light, the manufacturer. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate you guys. I'm trying to get to 25,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Thank you for that. Modelo Especial overtook Bud Light as the top-selling U.S. beer in May, punctuating a months-long boycott of Bud Light that has reshuffled the beer industry. Modelo represented 8.4% of U.S. retail store beer sales in the 4 weeks ended June 3rd, compared with 7.3% for Bud Light, according to an analysis of Nielsen data by consulting firm Bump Williams. Bud Light sales have tanked since April, when transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney posted an image on Instagram of a personalized Bud Light can that the brand had sent them as a gift. The Instagram post, of course, sparked a massive boycott, and people just completely have lost interest in being associated with the Bud Light brand. Bud Light sales were down 24% in the week ended June 3rd compared to the same week last year. But that's in revenue. They were down 28.2% in volume, actual physical beer cans and beer bottles. Other brands, Anheuser-Busch manufacturers, have also taken a hit, including Budweiser and Michelob Ultra. The continued decline through May is an ominous sign for Bud Light distributors during what they say is a make or break stretch between Memorial Day and the 4th of July. Most Anheuser-Busch distributors are independently owned, and many of them by families who have sold Budweiser for generations. Some Anheuser-Busch distributors said they are now contemplating layoffs, which means they're planning layoffs. Because how can you employ people if you can't sell the product because people don't want it anymore? Other distributors who also carry Constellation brands said their losses have been partially offset by Modelo's surge. Quote, "Our year is screwed," says an Anheuser-Busch distributor who doesn't carry Modelo. Bud Light's total sales over the first 5 months of the year are still higher than any other beer, the company said. Anheuser-Busch also remains the largest brewer in the country, but some Bud Light distributors said Tuesday they believe Bud Light may be permanently dethroned. Bud Light in 2001 surpassed Budweiser as the country's top-selling beer, according to Ben Steinman, editor of Beer Marketers Insights, an industry tracking firm. In recent years, Bud Light's U.S. sales have been falling as drinkers switch to Mexican import beers, seltzers, wine, and spirits. Meanwhile, Modelo and Michelob Ultra, a low-calorie beer made by Anheuser-Busch, have been gaining traction. Those two beers were on track to eventually overtake Bud Light, but before the boycott, that switch appeared to be at least a year away. The sudden shift is, quote, momentous and even more so if it sticks. Modelo is sold in the U.S. by Constellation Brands. Constellation acquired the brand in 2013 from Anheuser-Busch after U.S. regulators required Anheuser-Busch to sell U.S. rights to Modelo Especial and Corona to gain clearance for its acquisition of Mexican brewer Grupo Modelo. In 2013, Modelo didn't rank among the top 10 U.S. beer brands, a Constellation spokesman said. It's now the top brand in California, as well as in metropolitan areas such as Chicago, Dallas, and Baltimore. It's a top seller among Hispanic consumers and is growing in popularity among non-Hispanic consumers as well. Since the boycott, Anheuser-Busch has accelerated production of new Bud Light ads leaning into themes of football and country music, but it's not working. The brewer also told its distributors that it would buy back unsold cases of beer that have gone past their expiration date. That's normally something that Bud Light is not responsible for. If they sell the beer to the distributor and the distributor doesn't sell the beer, it's normally the distributor's problem. But Bud Light is well aware that they've created a complete disaster for the entire marketplace, for their distributors, for their sales reps, for the truck drivers, even for the retailers. They've offered incredible rebates, but they are still losing sales. And what's going to happen when the rebates aren't there anymore? It's not going to help them sell extra cases and cases of beer. To look at the political slant in the business section from the Washington Post, Bud Light sales fall in U.S. as Mexico's Modelo gains popularity. Bud Light has been targeted in a recent boycott, but consumers might be moving away from the brand anyway amid stagnation for domestic beer in general. Even amid fallout prompted by a Bud Light advertisement featuring a transgender influencer, Anheuser-Busch InBev was confident in May that Bud Light was still America's top-selling brand, a title it has held for more than 2 decades. But a recently released analysis of the beer brand sales numbers suggests that reign might be in jeopardy. It's over. There's no way they're getting it back. They've lost so much momentum. They're losing so much distribution. And when you go from number 1 to whatever they're going to be, number 2 or number 3, they're going to lose so many places they otherwise could sell in. In May, sales of Modelo Especial, the Mexican beer brand, outpaced the longtime leader as AB InBev's grapples with a wave of cultural backlash to an April Instagram ad in which Dylan Mulvaney shows off a can of Bud Light bearing their likeness. And then, of course, there was no response from the company to follow up and explain, hey, this was just one can made for one person. We are not putting Dylan Mulvaney's face on all the Bud Light cans. They were afraid to actually come out to the public and really explain what was going on. They instead ultimately wound up blaming the public for not realizing they only intended to do one promotional item and that it wasn't a mass-marketed product. In the 4 weeks leading up to May 20th, Modelo Especial claimed the highest share of the U.S. sales at 8.6% compared with Bud Light's 7.6%. That is a turnaround from the 4 weeks leading up to March 5th when Bud Light had 10% of sales to Modelo Especial's 7.7%. That is a massive switch. Asked whether Cinco de Mayo, the Mexican holiday, contributed to Modelo's May success, Bump Williams said, Modelo has been on a steady rise for a long stretch now, and while holiday time executions can lead to some lift in sales, they continue to perform after Cinco de Mayo just as well. In recent years, Modelo and other Mexican beer have had a growing presence in the U.S. According to a Post analysis, about 80% of America's beer imports are from Mexico, up from 17% in the early 1990s. However, Bud Light continues to top its competitors so far this year, with 9% share of dollar sales to Modelo's 8%. Quote, Bud Light is still very much the number 1 beer brand based on sales year to date, Williams said in an email, noting that the beer brand has steadily dominated sales since 2001. However, If current trends were to continue at their most recent pace, then there is a chance that Modelo could surpass Bud Light and become the #1 beer brand ranked on sales by the end of 2023, he added. Quote, but there is still a lot of ground to cover before we hit that point, and a lot can happen between now and December 31st. Sure, if Modelo goes and hires Dylan Mulvaney, then it would about be equal. They could put Dylan Mulvaney's face on their bottles. That would get people to not want to buy Modelo and then maybe buy a different brand. But no, I mean, the world of reality, there is no chance that Bud Light is going to be able to regain its market position that it threw away on this ridiculous woke advertisement that it didn't then go and explain to the public what they actually were trying to do and what they weren't trying to do. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Did you expect Bud Light to lose its title as top-selling U.S. beer? And did you expect Modelo to come around and take that spot away? Do you think there's any chance, literally 1 in a million, that Bud Light could come back and hold on to that #1 spot for 2023, knocking the competitors out of the way? Is there something they could possibly do that would make Kid Rock say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to shoot up cans of beer with my gun anymore. I want to go buy Bud Light, and everybody else should go buy it. Anyone who promotes Bud Light or even says they are neutral on Bud Light, like Garth Brooks said he was neutral on Bud Light or supported Bud Light, and then of course chose to insult people who were not neutral on Bud Light. But anyone who tries to support them seems to get burned. I don't see who, how, and where they could possibly turn this around. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to see what you think. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.